All right, can everyone see?
Yep.
Okay. All right, welcome to a meeting of Vermont's Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Thank you all for joining. Here are our relational community agreements. If folks could read them and give us a quick thumbs up so that we know that we're all on the same page, we'd appreciate it. Yeah, if folks could hit the thumbs up button. Julia, I'm going to ask you if you're seeing thumbs because I can't see everyone.
I have seen thumbs from Rich and Adam. That's all I've got. Carla and I are also putting the helmet up.
Okay. If all the advisory council members could give us a thumbs up, that would be helpful. Okay, if there are folks who aren't resonating with the community agreements, just let us know. All right, let's move on. So here are the meeting minutes that we need to approve. There are several. We have September 26 from 2025. And then for 2026, we have February 11, April 8, July 8. And those are all in the chat there.
We do not currently have quorum, so we won't be able to approve those meeting minutes today.
All right. I was hoping folks would jump on. Okay. For the agenda today, we're going to do updates really quickly, and then we have an icebreaker for you all to process and talk through the draft environmental justice complaint definition. We'll do public comment and a break, and then you all will have a chunk of time that's unfacilitated to talk more about the definition. We'll debrief and then talk about next steps. Okay, I'm gonna pass it to Juliet to do the updates.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, so we have a couple of updates for you guys today. They're all pretty exciting. So first and foremost, as you guys know, over the last probably about 8 months, there has been a subgroup that the AC and IAC created to develop some community engagement plan guidance. That guidance was finished as of this Monday and shared with the IAC members so that all the covered agencies can use that guidance to build their community engagement plans. Yeah, I see Jennifer's clapping. Yeah, Jennifer is one of, I think there were 9 of us in this subgroup, one of 9 people who really worked their butts off to put this guidance together. So thank you, Jennifer, for being here and for working on that. It was a really great experience. So if folks want to see the guidance, it's on our EJ resource library. It's also been shared with you over email, but I will drop it in this chat as well because it's really cool. Yeah, there, I think that's our public link. So thanks, Jennifer, for dropping it. And then our second update is related to the centralized environmental justice complaint intake system. So a little bit of context, about 2 years ago, you guys, the advisory council, gave some recommendations to the civil rights and environmental justice complaint summary reports we received that year, where you recommended that for environmental justice complaints, covered agencies develop a centralized intake system where all EJ complaints can be brought in, triaged, and appropriately referred. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop is the way some folks have referred to it. And there's now a task group that we're trying to put together to support this work. So we'll talk about that a little bit today, but just wanted to share Jeffrey is on that task group as of right now. And this is kind of one of the things we'll talk about today is an open call to anyone who wants to participate in that task group, because it's going to be pretty cool. This isn't something that we've ever done at the state before. So it's exciting work. And then our last update is related to what is in the law cited as 3 VSA section 6004H. This is a part of the law that says that, quote unquote, it shall be the goal of the covered agencies under the law to direct investments proportionately. This is related to the, sorry, my voice is being scratchy. This is related to the baseline spending reports that we completed a couple of months ago back in February. Kind of developing a statement around this goal of proportionately directed investments is something that the covered agencies have been working on as like an ongoing implementation effort. And so this work is continuing to finalize and, you know, we will provide additional information when appropriate. There's just some ongoing discussions happening across some of the some covered agencies as we kind of come to a conclusion here, but we will be able to give you a definitive update on that soon. Are there any questions related to any of these updates before we move on? I know I kind of went through them rapid fire. Yeah, Carla.
Yeah, I would like to add for the first update that Juliet provided, that the next step in the process of creating community engagement plans for the covered agencies, a robust technical assistance phase will very soon initiate. Actually, I may share that we already started meeting with some of the agencies to initiate this round of technical assistance. So that's what we're currently building. And you will hear more from Kim and Juliet. Hello, Mariana. We just provided the great news that the guidance is out for the creation of the community engagement plans. Mariana was also part of the subgroup that worked on creating this document. So thank you, Mariana.
Yeah, shout out. All right, I think if there are no questions or comments related to those updates, we're good to move on. Thanks, guys, for listening.
Thanks. Okay, so the goals for today are to get to consensus on the proposed EJ complaint definition, determine any additional work that needs to happen to finalize the definition, and then also determine if the council needs collaboration with the IAC to finalize the definition. And this bullet is referring to that in past meetings, some advisory council members have expressed, you know, possibly wanting information from covered agencies about some of the limitations that they may have in taking information from the public, responding to information. So I think it would be good to touch base and to see if that would be helpful. I'll also name that the IAC, we had an IAC meeting on July 28th, I believe, where they spoke about this proposed definition in detail. They talked about the task group. So we just recommend going back and looking at the minutes for that. And then the fourth goal is to determine next steps, immediate next steps and goals here. Okay, so now we're just going to jump in and do a quick overview to get everyone up to speed. So civil rights and environmental justice complaints are different. With civil rights complaints, the federal government provides a very clear legal framework and establishes requirements for management and resolution of the complaints. And then also the elements for compliance are also very clearly outlined. With the environmental justice complaints, as we know, there is no framework. The framework needs to be developed. There's no pre-existing requirements for management and resolution, and we don't have any predetermined elements for compliance. Now we're going to just review the advisory council recommendations back in 2024. So the components of a unified environmental justice complaint response system that you all outlined for the IAC were agency points of contact for environmental justice complaint intake and coordination, and then accessible interagency complaint intake, referral, and then also tracking process. Shared standards across the covered agencies for complaint review, response, coordination, and resolution. And then centralized interagency system for record keeping, trend analysis, and reporting. Okay, so now we're going to look at the proposed definition of an environmental justice complaint. And this definition was provided by Mariana, Matt, and also Rich. And I don't know, Juliet, are you able to put that link in the chat for folks?
Yes, I can. I'll do that right now.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the overview of the definition, and then in the next slide, we'll look at the full definition together. So an EJ complaint alleges a disregard or neglect of any of the principles of environmental justice. It also means that people or communities that can file a complaint include people who have allegedly experienced obstruction to their access to environmental benefits, disproportionate exposure to environmental burdens, and then a lack of meaningful participation, information, services, protections related to the EJ law. And then here's the full proposed definition. I'm going to give everyone a chance to just read it and process it. Hey, Jennifer, go ahead.
Hi there. I guess I'd like some clarity. I know that in the law here, I pulled like from the EJ law, this is where like the words complaint and environmental justice are used. This is some of it. I could pull the other section as well. But I guess just to be clear on what we're trying to do here. So, nothing in the law specifically says we have to define EJ complaint, but I'm assuming that that's what we're trying to do in order to just have some type of standard, what even are we talking about type definition. I'm wondering, like, this proposed definition, are you proposing it to be added into the law? Are you proposing it to be added into like A&R's definitions? I'm kind of curious where does this go? And then also just clarity on like what's the intent behind creating another definition at this time? Yeah, this isn't like a specific target of the law or deadline in the law. So I'm just wondering what's the intent here?
Yeah, go ahead, Juliet and Carl.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for that question. That's actually a really good point of clarification. So I think if maybe we go back like 2 slides or so where Kim was sharing, or 3 slides where Kim was sharing the difference between the framework that exists for civil rights complaints and the framework that doesn't yet exist for environmental justice complaints. This has been something that the covered agencies have been asking about for the last couple of years in the IAC's response to each of the AC's recommendations annually, which is basically like, how do we, since there isn't a formal like federal framework like there is for civil rights related to EJ, how do we define an environmental justice complaint and distinguish it from, other types of complaints that get received? And so when Mariana, Matt, and Rich met during one of the office hours a couple of months ago, this was kind of the question they were trying to answer. And so the proposed definition that is on slide 9 was actually drafted by Rich, Mariana, and Matt as part of the advisory council's 2026 response to the 2026 civil rights and EJ complaints. So I don't know if that fully answers your questions, but I think the purpose is in order for us to really stand up an EJ complaint intake system, we need to know what is an EJ complaint and how do we handle, like, what distinguishes it from like other types of complaints that we can receive.
And then if I could just one follow-up, that's all. I can understand all that. So, but in terms of like the interpretation of a complaint, is the hope that because this definition here is, it's broad, and that someone who calls up a state agency and says, I wasn't informed that, I don't know, my water was going to be shut off or something like that. Is that what we're getting at? Is that any complaint that falls into this category should be put into this bucket of what the advisory council and the IAC need to review as an EJ complaint? Not that we're creating a new like form that says EJ complaint on it, right? This is like, how do agencies interpret the complaints they receive? Is that true?
I think, I don't want to speak for like everyone who's been involved in this process, but I think the answer is yes. In trying to build a centralized complaint intake, triage, and referral system, it's not, the onus is not on the complainant to know, does my complaint perfectly fit within this definition, but rather like, I know where I can put my complaint, and then somebody who we would need to identify as part of the procedural element of this, somebody will be able to triage and properly refer the complaint so that it can get addressed and resolved. So the point is to like make it as easy as possible for the complainant themselves. But maybe we could pass it to Mariana and Rich, who are both here, who participated in drafting this definition, if you guys want to share it all. I don't want to speak for you guys.
Rich, do you want to go first to share your understanding, or I can share what I thought we were doing here, but I'm happy to wait and let you speak first if you want to go for it.
Yeah, I'll take a chance on speaking, given that there might be sudden noise in the background with equipment outside. I don't have a whole lot to say other than we were concerned that this definition, as we worked on it, be expanded beyond simply human-centered impacts, and we talk about the environment herself, and that definition was pulled in from the early inspirational work that we started with a couple of years ago, and I'm glad to see it here. I think this is all still a work in progress, and so I think it's a good beginning.
Thank you, Rich. I also like to add that I guess we understood that agencies were hoping to organize better, and we were hoping to have more clarity as of how to respond to the complaints. And we thought that starting by a definition of what an EJ complaint would be, given that there isn't one, and start to try to sort it out from what a Title VI complaint is. And hopefully, and eventually, people in community members will have one system for just sharing a complaint that is related to either or, without having them to think about this. I mean, I've experienced something in my community. I found contamination in my creek, or there's not enough supermarkets, whatever people feel like they need to bring to, or I've experienced discrimination in a government decision, whatever it is that the community members will bring, ideally they don't have to. Ideally, we can develop a system in which they don't have to sort out if they are complaining about they are raising a complaint that has to do with environmental justice or with Title VI, that they can just express what is going on with them, and then internally the agencies can sort it out, and we can participate in the part that corresponds to environmental justice if we were to review the complaints or advocate for the community members. So I guess this is the beginning of all that humongous work. But yeah, like Rick said, work in progress, and we were trying to also make sure that to include the environment in environmental justice definition.
Thank you, Mariana and Rich, and to provide a little bit of the perspective from the interagency committee. As you all know, there's a definition of environmental justice in statute, and that definition let us know what environmental justice is, and from the perspective of the interagency committee, it was important for us to understand, to understand from the perspective of the advisory council, what kind of allegations may trigger the complaint process. And so this work product is the thought behind that, right? Is capturing Rich's, Matt's, and Mariana's thoughts regarding what's going to trigger the complaint process. And so that definition was utilized, for example, in the last interagency committee meeting, to start thinking through what elements the central intake system may need to have or stand up, so that we can center this definition and make sure that complaints are triggered by the elements in this definition in particular. So that's this exercise.
Sounds good. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions before we move on?
I wanted to add something. I hope I'm not confusing, but we have spoken, some members of the advisory council have spoken about at some point, whatever is appropriate and wherever there's an opportunity, we've spoken about amending the EJ definition as is defined in the statute and the law. So I know that this is not that conversation, but I just wanted to bring it about and and have it recorded somewhere that the council is hoping at some point to bring back to the legislature a reviewed definition of what EJ law. And the only reason why I'm mentioning this here is because we try to add some of the concept that we feel as a council that is missing in the definition of the law. We try to incorporate it already in the EJ complaint definition, so that we're a little bit ahead of the game in that sense. Not ahead of the game, but you know what I mean. And this is to respect the perspective brought by Rich, who is the representative of the indigenous communities that had stewarded this land for the longest time. So I think that is a very relevant voice that we need to hear raised. So just to add, and nothing needs to be responded, just wanted to bring that back so that we at some point look into that.
Thank you, Mariano. Well said. So what's happening next, here's the definition. Part of what we want to do is a version of an icebreaker to help everyone actually process this definition by way of trying to reframe it and describe it to each other. So the question that we have, well, before we go into that, I'll just explain a little bit more why we're doing it in the form of an icebreaker. You all have mentioned that relationship building and creating space for conversation in these meetings built around that is important to you. Collaboration obviously is very important. The last couple of meetings where the EJ complaint definition has come up, folks have this expressed that this, body of work, like moving through coming to consensus on this definition, needs to be iterative. So as much as possible, bringing it to these meetings is going to be important. It would be helpful for you all to have a shared understanding of where folks across the council sit with this definition to make progress. And then another important outcome for our team is just understanding what technical assistance we can provide. So the icebreaker is, how would you explain this draft definition to your neighbor? So if Juliet, you could put that question in the chat, and this doesn't need to be exact, but it's just a way for us to process what Rich, Mariana, and Matt has put together to each other. So I'm gonna stop sharing and then pass it all to Pat. Sorry, I'm muting myself. Pass it on to you all.
I can put the definition in the chat in just a moment, Jennifer. I see your comment.
And could I jump in just to ask, given that I was late, to which I apologize, if we went through a round of introductions at the beginning and I missed that, or we started with the goals and this icebreaker is also a little bit of an intro time. Just curious if what I missed at the beginning, and again, I'm so sorry.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for asking. We didn't do formal introductions, and so when folks come off mute to share, definitely share your name and what your affiliation is and what seat you hold on the council for folks who may not know. Yeah, and then whatever way you'd like to structure the conversation, but just want to make sure that we hear from every advisory council member. And you can share in the chat or verbally, whatever feels best.
I'm happy to go first, even though I was a little bit engaged with this definition. And perhaps I have more time to digest it or think about it. It's still very challenging to think how you will tell it to a neighbor. So anyway, I'm just going to introduce myself for those of you who I haven't met before. My name is Mariana. I work for Hunger Free Vermont, and I am a representative for food security at the Environmental Council. I'm very happy to be here, and I love the work that we're doing together. And it's been a number of years for some of us, and I feel we're getting some momentum. So it's a great time if you're a new council member to just jump in and enjoy the ride. And the way I would explain these to a neighbor, I would just start by saying, do you know that there's an environmental justice law in Vermont? So I would start by asking them, what do they know? As opposed to me trying to explain anything, because people usually know a lot more than we think they do. So I would start by asking that, and then I would also ask, so, did you know or not? And what do you think it is? And I would try to explain this definition based on what I hear from them. So I would have thought, and I thought from the very beginning, when I didn't know anything about environmental justice, that we were talking about just the environment, or mostly about the environment, Mother Earth, nature, natural resources, and not so much about people. And that was a surprise for me to learn that environmental justice is a lot about the communities that are impacted by what other communities or other people do in the environment. So yeah, that's how I would start a conversation. And then I would make sure that I tell people that if they feel that they have something to say, or I would not say if you have something to complain about. I would invite participation as opposed to invite, raising a complaint. Although I'll make sure that that is also clear, because some people feel like they need to complain, with all rightfully so. But I would just, because I know that government interactions for community members are so difficult, especially for some people that have experienced always discrimination and unfriendliness. So they may not want to engage at all. Even if there is a space for them to complain about something, they may not even want to do that. So I would just try to invite them, or let them know that this law brings a change in hopes of a change in that traditional relationship that has been so painful in the past. And hopefully that will open up the possibility for people to say what they need to improve, or how they need better access, or what is it that is not working in their community in regard to environmental justice, or to the environment, or to other environmental burdens or benefits. And I probably won't use the word burdens or benefits, but try to bring something like that sounds more familiar to them, depending on who they are. So yeah, a lot of listening. That would be my approach to explain anything. All right, and I'll pass it to somebody else. Thank you.
I'll speak here. I'll just read my comment out loud that I put in the chat. I kind of back up and approach this from a process sort of standpoint. I'll just read it out loud. In explaining this definition and process to a neighbor, I would suggest that a complaint in and of itself need not be seen as negative or off-putting or oppositional. It's not a problem. It's part of a conversation or exchange, and it says out loud what might otherwise be ignored or assumed, or even more likely, unknown. It expands our mutual awareness and it makes it real. Most importantly, this now present conversation includes other than humans, whom, after all, co-create this so-called environment in objective terms that provides everything that we as humans draw upon. So it's moving this in a direction that that we definitely need. Everybody needs this. We cannot carry on in our benighted ways. So I think it's good work, and this is a good approach.
Folks have other thoughts? Or if folks don't have thoughts individually, if folks have thoughts in response to what Rich and Mariana had shared, I think there's some really good insights and lessons and some things that you both put words to that I feel like capture a lot of previous perspectives of folks on the council. And really the goal of this meeting is to provide a space for you all to connect, because this is something that we're at a point where our unit and the interagency committee can't really step in this place. Like, this is really about centering you. And so just encouraging that, if you'd like to answer the prompt, you're more than welcome to, but also if you just want to share space around this topic. The last, I think, meeting that, like, full council meeting or public meeting rather, I think there were only 3 or 4 members. So I think it's really important, especially Jeffrey, now having you on the council, it would just be helpful, for you all to at least get to a place where you have some shared understanding of where you all are at. And then just a reminder that towards the end of the meeting, you'll have some completely unfacilitated time to actually work out what you'd like to do next and how you'd like to move forward. So if we feel like the prompt has gotten us to where the farthest that we can go. If you'd like to start talking about that, you're also more than welcome. So I'm going to step back.
Yeah, thanks, Juliet. If you can, well, thank you, Kim, for what you said, but Juliet, are you going to list the I'm not, maybe I'm, again, I apologize because I was late, but I'm not sure who is present here from the AC Council, besides Jennifer and Rich and myself. Are the other people in this call are members of the council or members of the public or members of the interagency? And even though if you're not a member of the council, I'd love for you to introduce yourself so that we get to know you, and we're curious to know what brought you to this meeting.
Yeah, the only other member of the council that you didn't mention, Mariana, who's on this call right now, is Jeffrey. And then Adam and Alejandra are both from the Conservation Law Foundation and are attending as members of the public.
Yeah, and then one other thing, Brittany was on the call, but I see that she left.
Thank you. Thank you. Do the members of, I mean, are we going to move into a next part of the meeting if nobody else wants to participate in the icebreaker, or should we invite members of the public to share the reason
Yeah.
why they're visiting the meeting, or we're just hanging on a little bit more? I'm just curious to see what's the process for today, or is it are we the members of the AC are facilitating, or I'm a little lost.
Yeah, so essentially, if we feel like we're done with the icebreaker, that's totally okay. We do have space. We were gonna do a public comment after this anyway, so it sounds like the council is open to hearing from the folks who are on the call, and I think it's your meeting, and if that's what you'd like to do, that's great. And yeah, that just means you all have more time to work together to figure out next steps. So that sounds good to me. So we'll just hold space for public comment, and folks can jump in and you guys can take it from there.
Is now a good time as a
Yeah.
member of the public? Okay. Sorry. Hi, my name's Adam Reynolds. I'm a lawyer with the Conservation Law Foundation and a part of our environmental justice team. And we've been trying to jump on and join some of these calls to get a better understanding of what's moving forward with the environmental justice law, and especially the work that the advisory council is doing, because it's so important to that implementation. And so that's what has brought me and my colleague Lexi Alejandra onto the call this morning. And so I appreciate hearing the definition that's been shared. I think it's a really important recognition of what's needed in this next step of the process to implement some of the things that it sounds like the EJ Advisory Council has recommended before. I'm newer to this than 2 years, so I haven't been around to learn about that initial recommendation. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to participate in these and to hear from folks. And we don't want to step in the way of people sharing their sort of takes on the definition. I think our goal here is to understand what's going on and see how we can be supportive as an organization.
Thank you. That's great to meet you, Adam. Where are you guys located physically in Vermont? Where are you joining from?
I'll let Lexi chime in and join for herself.
Sure.
I'm actually located in Boston, in CLF's main Boston office, but I'm up in Vermont a lot. My mom's family's from the Charlotte area. My parents are up in Ferrisburg, so hopefully get the chance to meet folks in person at some point.
Cool. Yeah, amazing. We can hear you, Alejandra. Lexi.
It's okay. You can call me Alejandra. So I met actually Mariana and Rich, I met you at, and Juliet, we met at the Environmental Justice Network event. So it's really nice to see you both again, or all three of you again. But yeah, just echoing what Adam said, I'm in Burlington. But yeah, and our office is in Montpelier. So yeah, and really great to like hear this work come to fruition and everything you guys have been doing. So it's really great to be on this call.
That is so nice. I'm so glad that you guys came. Yeah, that summit was really, really inspiring, and we got to meet a lot of people. Sorry that I initially did not recognize the name,
It's
but
okay.
yeah,
Totally
super
okay.
welcome. Yeah, yeah. And what is it that you do for your job at your organization?
Yeah, so I'm a lawyer at Conservation Law Foundation.
All right, are there any other questions or thoughts that we want to share here? Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, Rich.
Just while we're here and we have a few folks on the call, what do we need for quorum? Because I'm not averse to jumping back on approving minutes.
Yeah, that's a great question, Rich. So there's 11 seats on the council and we need a majority. So we would need at least 6 people here from the council to get quorum. I'm just gonna say, for the record, just for the advisory council members who might be confused about like the participation, we do have the ability to see who RSVPs from these meetings. And I will say, I was expecting there to be about 8 advisory council members on today's call, just from that RSVP. So I wanted to put it out there that I at least was under the impression we were going to have quorum today, and I'm sorry that we don't, but I think that might be some helpful context for you guys about how this conversation was initially structured.
Thanks. That's great context to understand. And a follow-up question to this is 8 people answered out of the 11 seats. Do we have the 11 seats filled, or we are currently having empty seats? And is our job, or can we do something to get folks appointed so that it is easier to get quorum and continue to move a little bit, because I think the last meeting, which I was not able to attend, I think we didn't have quorum either. And the one before, which I think I attended, we didn't have quorum either, I think. So I think we're struggling with quorum, and I wonder what we could do. And I know, Kim, you suggested me to reach out individually to some of the members. Is that something that Rich, Jennifer, and I, and Jeffrey, as members of the council, we want to talk about or think? And I know I already put so many questions all in one comment, so I'll be quiet and let you, Juliet or Kim, answer if there are empty seats, and then maybe we can chat ideas of how we create for quorum.
Yeah, so just to answer your first set of questions, Mariana, so as I said, there are 11 seats on the council, and we currently only have 1 vacancy. So if you remember Walter Brownridge, he had resigned a couple of months ago, I think maybe in January of 2026. His role as the environmental justice focused populations representative is still open, has not been filled. And just for some context for you guys on why it hasn't been filled, I actually don't know, but I will say that we are not the appointing authority. You guys would know, some of you are appointed by the Committee on Committees, and some of you are appointed by, I think, the Office of the Speaker of the House. if I'm not mistaken. And so those bodies in the legislature are responsible for appointing people to this role on the advisory council. In the past, we have all been given opportunities to make recommendations as to who can fill different roles. The legislature has the right to take that recommendation or leave it. And yeah, long story short, there's not a lot of control our unit has in terms of appointments. And so like maybe we can talk about ways that you guys could get involved in terms of applying that pressure to get more appointments, but I can't necessarily guarantee that it would be a fruitful venture. You know, if the legislature moves at their pace. And yeah, I will stop talking now. Thank you.
Yeah, and a couple folks reached out today. Like there's some medical things going on, and so you know that also plays a role. But Mariana, I think your suggestion actually makes sense. Like I don't know if any of the other advisory council members on the call would want to talk through if there are things that you feel like you can do. And yes, Mariana, I do think that the more that you all can reach out by email just to other advisory council members to see how they're doing, even that would be really helpful. Sometimes, especially if you've been away for a bit, it might feel intimidating to like come back into the space. Um, and so I think there's real value to you all understanding a little bit more about what folks have going on professionally and personally. And in that way, you can support each other a little bit, you know, a little bit better in coming and feeling engaged. So. And just want to give space for Jeffrey and Jennifer. If you want to say anything verbally, I see some messages in the chat. So maybe we can take 10 minutes if that feels helpful to discuss this. And if not, we can take a break and then come back to do the unfacilitated discussion.
Sounds good. I'll take the chance to go to the bathroom. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Is that what we're proposing?
Yeah, that works for folks.
Yeah.
10 minutes is great.
Sounds good. I'll put the questions that I shared before in the chat so that people can think about if we want to talk about that when we come back.
Thank you.
All right, it is 11:12. We should jump back and see if we can answer Mariana's questions. We do need to transition to the unfacilitated discussion around, planning to move forward with this definition, or at least decide how you all want to move forward. So we're gonna transition to that at 11:20, so you have enough time to discuss before the end of the meeting.
So
Anyone feel free to jump in.
yeah, I'm jumping in, but please jump in on top of me or ahead of me if you feel like I'm rambling too much. But yeah, I was just thinking if we could advance something. I mean, Reach and I, and well, now Jennifer is present. We could take a little bit of time if you guys like to go in deeper into the EJ complaint definition without quorum. Not sure if that is that much helpful, because well, two of us already were involved in defining that definition or drafting that definition. But Jennifer, maybe you want to add something or take something out, or munch that definition a little bit, digest it together. And otherwise, I would say let's chat a little bit on how we could decide which members of the council we should reach out personally. Each of us, maybe one of us can reach out to one person and say, hey, what's going on? We miss you. Please come. We need you. That sort of friendly re-invite. And yeah, other than that, and the other thing that I thought that we should talk is what I mentioned earlier, which is what Reach has been telling us since the very beginning, which is try to propose an amendment, which I don't even know how the process is, but maybe somebody else knows, to add the environment in the environmental justice definition. So yeah, those are I'm flexible, whoever want to speak first, or what topic should we jump in?
Just to clarify, at 11:20, we do have to move into the EJ complaint definition, kind of like planning session. But if folks have some thoughts, like Jeffrey, Rich, Jennifer, in the next 5 minutes to share about any of those items, you're more than welcome. I also think it might be worth at the end of the meeting, as a next step, actually deciding on a public meeting that perhaps we can go into detail on the definition and Rich's perspectives.
Okay, since we have just a couple minutes here, correct me if I'm mistaken here, but I'm not sure. It's my understanding that the process for carrying this bill forward allows for internal discussions about definitions, and that they don't necessarily need to go back to the legislature. So we can have those discussions, we can create these definitions, and then go forward with them. That was kind of left open. So I'm okay with the discussion where it's at right now. The working definition. I think we've moved it in a good direction.
The EJ, so there's two definitions, I think, that we're kind of talking through. There's the environmental justice complaint definition, which will support the complaint process for members of the public, and then also inform this complaint intake system. And then there's just the environmental justice definition under the law. And I think that's what you're referring to, Mariana, correct? In finding space to okay, got it. Juliet?
Sorry, I think that it might be helpful to also clarify that the terminology or definitions that already exist under the law. So as Kim mentioned, the term environmental justice, the term environmental benefits, the term environmental burdens, those terms that already have definitions under the law, those are ones where as I just dropped in the chat, you would have to recommend revisions to the General Assembly in order to change that legal definition. However, lucky us, an EJ complaint does not have a definition under the law, so we don't have to do that. This is like a framework we're setting up for ourselves. So that's the difference, and I hope that that's helpful. It gives us a little bit more flexibility with that regard. But if you guys are interested in expanding what the law's view of environmental justice is, then that is going to have to include the General Assembly at some point.
And Jennifer, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just not really sure what to say that's additive here. I love what you put forward. I said in the chat why. I mean, I was sort of waiting because I thought there were other council members for the whole restatement part, but I don't know. Like I'm not really sure what this part of the meeting is like. What's the goal here? I'm curious what the planning thing is that's happening in 1 minute. So not knowing that, this is sort of the first time I'm really digesting this part. So yeah, I'm not sure what you need from me this time. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think we kind of addressed some of the initial questions that Mariana had. And then to transition into this last portion, I'm just going to share my screen again. Before I do that, I hear part of what you all are saying is we don't have the full council. And I also want to share that the origin of this framework was developed in a meeting where folks didn't have quorum. And so the elements of the definition, just the general framework and approach, those things were just developed through conversation. And so while we definitely understand and, I was hoping to have everyone here, I still think it's important to at least talk through some of the finer details of the definition, just so that even for Rich and Mariana and perhaps Matt, and whoever else wants to move forward from here in figuring out, what to do with this definition, you having the context that you need to move forward. And so just wanting to say that there is value in talking this through. We do have some questions that would be helpful for you all to answer the best you can.
And then just in terms of statutory changes, I think it's a great thing for us to I'm glad we're talking about it in August. And as long as by January, if that's a goal of the council, I think we should keep that afloat. And if we do have to have a public meeting where we talk about changes, we can work toward that. But we would need an idea of that, I would think, by January, if we were trying to recommend new changes to the new legislature. Maybe that could be a goal that we set over the next several months.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I was going to say, to reiterate exactly what Jennifer said, if Juliet and Kim can help us with the process part that I certainly don't know, and the timeline, so that we arrive prepared with enough time to discuss and put all the parts that needs to be in place to propose the legislature the new definition that we are thinking about. That would be very helpful, I would say.
Yeah, and then sorry, just because it came to mind, like in terms of I got this sense at some point this past year when I was testifying to the House, I think it was to House Environment. They were, it seemed like there were members of that committee who were interested in like changing this law in some way. They weren't specific. I think it definitely had to do with the members of the advisory council. I got the feeling that they wanted like the regional planning commissions more involved in this because of their connection to the LURB, and just as an example, but maybe we kind of like, if there's any energy from lawmakers or around the council itself, I don't know, maybe there's some way that we can, I think it's still a really valuable conversation or actions. Like we need to get quorum at these meetings. We need to get these council members, to come. And it's like, are they at work? Like we always have these meetings at the exact same time of day. And I'm like, well, in our guidance document, it says hold meetings outside of normal business hours, just for example. Like, I'm not sure what's going on with the rest of the council, but there are certain people I think we've only seen one time. And I truly don't even know the names of the other council members to reach out to them.
Go ahead, Juliet.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like, we're having 2, maybe 3 different conversations. And so, if from my perspective, it sounds like we're talking about the EJ complaint definition, which is one that doesn't require the General Assembly's approval to be, to run with. We're talking about other definitions under the law that do require the General Assembly's approval of our recommendations, especially around this conversation about the anthropocentric nature of how EJ is currently defined. And then this third conversation we're having that really is intrinsic to it all is participation. How do we get advisory council members here and participating in order to make the decisions necessary to move forward with bringing recommendations to the General Assembly, or in the case of the EJ complaint definition, finalizing a definition to bring to the covered agencies so that they can start building a central intake system for these complaints. I agree with the idea that, what Jennifer proposes a timeline in terms of like having a clear idea of recommendations by January could be helpful for our next legislative session. This is totally something that we can, our unit can support with like coordinating around public meetings for those conversations to take place. I think that what we can do now with our time is strategize around participation and bringing our fellow advisory council members into these conversations, and setting from, advisory council perspective, a work plan or like at some idea of how we want to get from, we currently have a draft EJ definition that has been reviewed by 4 or 5 advisory council members to we now have an EJ complaint definition that has been reviewed by everyone who's currently on the council and has been approved by people on the council through like a decision-making process, which would require quorum, so that the covered agencies can run with it. So it sounds like maybe there just needs to be some strategy on how do we get from point A to point B with this EJ complaint definition, and part of that includes participation. So I think that that's what maybe Kim is going to transition us into, is these questions around process. So maybe that's what we can talk about for the next like half hour or so.
Yeah, I would like that. So think about these questions in terms of how do we define a process to move forward. the first question is, does the full council agree with this definition as it is? We don't have the full council here, but it would be helpful if folks on the call can, clearly express how you feel about the definition. I feel like for the most part, that's already been done. And then what additional work and discussion is needed to finalize the definition? You've spoken a little bit to that. But I think as specific as we can get will be helpful. For example, is part of that additional work and next steps and immediate goals, does that look like each of you reaching out to an individual member of the advisory council? Does that mean, or could that look like setting up office hours to discuss this in a little more detail? What does that actually look like? And then does the council require any discussion or collaboration or even insights from the IAC or the covered agencies to make progress? And again, that bullet is really an attention to, in the past, several of you have described, wanting to understand a little bit more about the, where each covered agency is in terms of, what processes do they already have? What's, in terms of receiving information from the public, digesting it, and moving on from there. Like it sounds like in the past, at least, it was beneficial to get some more context from folks. And then just to reiterate, the last interagency committee meeting, folks went into detail about that. And so minutes would be minutes from that meeting will be a really good resource. So those are the questions. I'm going to stop sharing. We can put those questions in the chat, and just really encouraging like getting a concrete plan that we can move forward with to even answer some of your questions. Like, does that make sense? Does that feel clear for everyone?
I got disconnected for a moment, but I think I understand. Thanks, Kim.
Sure, no problem. Sure. This section is unfacilitated, so please feel free to just jump in and connect with each other.
Go ahead, Jennifer. I don't think there's any, it's unfacilitated, so.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I've said I love the definition. I think the like maybe something helpful at the end, like I'm looking at the second paragraph basically, and it's like any person can present a complaint. Maybe something more clarifying around like a complaint could be, received through a phone call, a letter, like a formal document, like any of community engagement activities. Like if you hear something, that's the kind of thing that I'm like, this could be really wide reaching if we're not talking about, we're going to formalize an EJ complaint form, which I don't think we should, because I don't think it'll be additive, but it's more about, it's really going to come into the training of the agency staff people to know, like when you hear something, then, it's routed through this system that could eventually come before the, the AC and we can all, and the IAC, and we can help with like the resolutions. It's yeah. So I don't know, in terms of that, maybe there's something to add there to make them kind of think expansively.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Jennifer, from what you just shared? So I agree with everything that you just said about like, making sure that the procedure is broad so that people don't have to jump through a particular hoop in order to file a complaint. They can do it in many ways. Are you saying that a form if there were an online form, it would not be helpful, period, or if an online form existed as one of many options for a complainant, like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like completely opposed to some type of online form, but that's not gonna solve the problem. It's more about like the process where the information is gathered and considered and dealt with. Yeah. And maybe it's a form that like an agency person could create as well, in terms of like they could fill it out potentially.
My question is there a form already for Title VI complaints? Is there something already that agencies have to collect any form of Title VI, not environmental concern, environmental justice, but at least Title VI so far? Is there anything? If I want to put a complaint to any agencies, is there something already? They're all supposed to, if it's accessible, is the question. Right, yes, but it already exists.
Yes.
Every agency has already something, a form.
So Mariana, this is Carla. Some of the agencies have systems stood up. I don't know about the status of all of the agencies, but I do know that all of the agencies provide reports on civil rights complaints, Title VI specifically to the council. So to the extent that they are able to communicate whether they have received or not, it is my understanding that the agencies all are accepting complaints based on civil rights. Now, the area that we're focusing our attention on is EJ. And so that's why the EJ component needs a little bit more development, is because there are some agencies that have stood up EJ forms and intake mechanisms on their websites to manage EJ, but that is less standard across the board, just because the requirements are not communicated anywhere as requirements that all of the agencies need to adopt. But yes, Mariana, some agencies do have intake forms. All of the agencies report on Title VI complaints, and those reports are available on our online EJ resource library.
Okay, then I have a follow-up question. I'm just trying to understand if I understand what we're supposed to do. So I think we started these conversations trying to have a one unified, combined system that will allow community members to share, complain, provide feedback, something that they are concerned. And the confusion is, or our intention is that people don't have to discern if it is a civil rights complaint or an environmental justice complaint. They want to complain about an injustice.
Yeah.
And I thought that we were trying to create a unified, coordinated intake system for public facing that has components of EJ and components of civil rights, or combining what already exists, and then have only one accessible, unified, coordinated intake system, so that the reports are easy to digest in term for us, and then it is manageable to respond or intervene or follow up with those complaints. Is that what we're trying to do? Or we really are not going to, or we're trying to separate ourselves from civil rights Title VI complaints? Because I can't imagine me, but maybe I'm wrong, how can we separate those two? Because when you talk about an injustice, are we gonna be telling people, wait a second, you need to know the civil rights law and the environmental justice law to know what are you complaining about. And that is impossible. We cannot even sort it out. So my thinking is we should make it easier for the people and create, and it may be a humongous work, I understand. If we're saying that all the agencies have different forms, separate and uncoordinated for civil rights already, and we are also trying to incorporate environmental justice, oh la la, this is gonna be a lot of work. And I'm not sure if that's our work or somebody else's work. But is this what we're trying to detangle, or I got all lost in the way, which could be. And
Yeah, this is
don't know.
actually, no, Mariana, you're hitting the nail on the head. You've identified questions that are important for us to consider. Now, there are some nuances here, because for civil rights, the agencies have requirements that are not necessarily common to them all. So the agencies that they report to may have requirements that vary. So that's why civil rights is treated differently. Now, what I find very, very interesting about your feedback and reflection here, Mariana, is that in the creation of the environmental justice central intake system, there may be an opportunity to, when a complaint is received or a concern is received from a member of the public, to analyze that concern or complaint and then triage, send it to the relevant agency marked as civil rights or EJ or both. So there's opportunity to do that. But civil rights, just given how prescriptive it is, coming straight from the federal government, is managed as a per agency matter.
Well, before I jump in, this is Juliet. Mariana, does that answer your question, or do you still feel unclear? Because if not, if it answers your question, then I won't talk, because I had something else I wanted to add.
I think, yeah, it added clarity, and also what Rich just put in the chat. So we're not trying to create one big humongous intake, but there is an opportunity. So there will be 2 tracks, but there is an opportunity to somehow triage when it comes to our track of EJ complaint system.
Indeed.
So maybe a better way to explain this is that the 2 tracks are less about the public's experience and more about the way that the agency manages the complaints. So as Carla said, if we were to have a complaint intake system for environmental justice, and the subject matter of a complaint that we receive, it relates to environmental justice, maybe it also includes some sort of alleged discrimination that falls under Title VI. It's not the complainant's job, and this is like something that I think you guys have made very clear in your recommendations. It's not the complainant's job to know what type of complaint is this. Does this count as an EJ complaint? Does this count as a civil rights complaint? Whatever. Their job is to file the complaint, and then we will have the intention is to have an intake system where that complaint will be triaged and appropriately referred. So as Carla said, if it actually isn't an EJ complaint, but rather is a complaint of discrimination under Title VI with a covered agency, it will be referred to that covered agency as a potential Title VI complaint and handled as such. But the point is, the goal would be that the experience of the public as a complainant is made less complicated, as opposed to them having the responsibility of having to not only file the complaint, but decide what type of complaint they have. So I hope that alleviates any of the concern. Obviously, it's going to take some time to make that system work. And that's I think what a lot of us are really excited to get into. But yeah, I hope that helps alleviate some of the anxiety around that.
It's like a lot of this is like, we're trusting that we can work it out in the future. But I guess, just to clarify, like in terms of, well, it's not up to the individual to know what type of complaint, like, I don't think that's commonly true like this is why people hire lawyers to fill out Title VI complaints for them to, explain the process. Like maybe not in Vermont, but if a person doesn't fill out the right form and doesn't complain in the right way, they don't have to be processed. They're going to be ignored. And maybe there's some kind of, internal process that we can design where if someone uses like, I'm thinking that maybe what we're leading to is like some kind of online portal to communicate with the ACIAC. And maybe it's an online portal to communicate with all the agencies, their specific complaints, but it's like a lot of the times it's like a story. It's like a many faceted issue that is EJ that people might be complaining about. And how to like tease that out or triage, like you guys were saying. That could be a great role for the AC in the future. Like once, we're getting through these deliverables and there's going to be a role for this council. I think it's a wonderful vision. And I'm like, that's not really what it's going to do. It won't like clean sweep everything. And also, maybe there's like a helpful agency staff person who wants to be like, actually, you have a civil rights issue here and you should file a complaint. But I don't know of any staff people who would, maybe, but it's not typical that an agency would like encourage someone to file a civil rights complaint. It's tough. This is tough. And I think it's ambiguous in the law because it's saying, provide a report to the EJ Council detailing all complaints alleging environmental justice issues or, Title VI violations. So it's just, recognizing this is a process that isn't defined, but also we can't really like sweeping define it either in a way that's going to be standard. But I don't know, it's going to take a lot of trust and a lot more work.
Thanks, Jennifer. I think that's adding a lot of clarity. So, in trying to come up with a definition, will be the first step of defining a process. So, and we are in charge of defining this process so I really don't understand what is this definition for if it's not the beginning of a process. Or if it's, or let's just open up our public meetings for people, and we do outreach throughout Vermont saying that we're here to hear your complaints. If you have one environmental justice complaint, and then, we can suggest people to file a civil right complaint. If it's not environmental justice, I am not sure what I understood everything that everybody has explained, but I don't understand what is it that we have to do. Why are we even, what are we doing with this definition then, if we're not creating a process of intake?
Yeah, Mariana, this is a great question. So yes, you were totally on the money. The definition is the foundation of what will become a process for the complaint system. I think you saw I was shaking my head when you said, do we have to come up with the process? And I was shaking my head no, because it's not just on the advisory council to come up with that process. That's why we were talking about the task group that we're putting together, which will include hopefully any advisory council members who are interested, members of the staff members from covered agencies. I was shaking my head to say, Mariana, it's helpful to get the definition from the perspective of the advisory council because you guys are representative of the communities that will be like the complainants, right? But it's not necessarily your job to then come up with the complaint process and triage process and resolution process all by yourselves. But it will be this definition is the jumping off point. So you're correct. Rich, I saw you came off camera or on camera if you wanted to jump in.
No, nothing to add, and it's very noisy. So thank you.
Thank you for all the questions. I just want to pause because we covered a lot and have been also trying to kind of reframe and get everyone on the same page. So just wanting to check to make sure folks feel clear about what we're trying to do today. Like, again, to Mariana's question, why are we discussing the EJ complaint definition? And essentially, how does that relate to the intake system? Do we feel good about that?
Thank you. Those notes are very important. There it says the Central Intake System Task Group. I didn't know that task group existed. I haven't seen these meetings, this meeting minutes. So thank you. Thank you. This is very clear now. So we are just providing the foundation for that group to continue working. Great. I don't have anything to add at this point. Thank you though.
Yes, sure. And I forgot to link the meeting minutes, so I'll go back and do that. But yes, so like the flow of this work.
They're in the chat. Sorry, I just wanted to say they're already in the chat.
Okay. So the flow, really where we're at, like if we step back and look at this from the interagency committee's perspective, you all told them 2 years ago, we need this intake system for X reasons. And the interagency committee said, we absolutely feel like this is something that we would like to operationalize, like figure out how to do it, right? Answer the question of, is it even possible to do it? What would that involve? And so part of what they said was, can you, advisory council, help us understand, what a framework could be for an environmental justice complaint so that we can inform this intake system. But the interagency committee, in lieu of having that definition, went ahead and created a detailed work plan to say, here's our plan once we have this definition, and also kind of alongside the process, this is what we're going to do to get to that end result. And so they've shared the work plan in the past. It's linked in the chat. And so you'll notice that you all are a part of that process. You all need to be involved in that process. And so the task group, the Central Intake System Task Group, is dedicated to moving that work plan forward. And, part of the phases of that work just include figuring out who wants to be on this task group. We're hoping that at least 2 of you would be interested. And just like a reminder, we had the Environmental Benefit Spending Guidance Task Group, which included some advisory council members, IAC members, and then a couple of staff members from across the covered agencies. So this intake system is, as Juliet said, something that's never been done before, and it's a space that requires a lot of collaboration, not just between the IAC and the AC, but also across the covered agencies. So I would recommend that you all familiarize yourself with the work plan again. And so the step that the AC is at right now is saying, okay, we have this proposed definition that 3 advisory council members put forth. How do we feel about that definition, and what progress can we make at this time, given like where we're at with quorum? What little steps can we make to move forward to inform that definition and get it to a place recognizing that it is going to be an iterative process. So hopefully that continues to clarify and help solidify, especially for some of the folks who weren't involved in the previous conversations. So to bring it back to answering some of those questions that we discussed, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So it sounds like in terms of agreeing that this definition feels good, folks on this call resonate with the definition, right? And there were some suggestions on additional things that could potentially be added towards the end. So we have some understanding, shared understanding between the folks on the call, and that's progress. That's important. To note, at the last meeting, the last advisory council meeting, that this definition was kind of, the framework of the definition was defined. The plan was to have office hours, like schedule office hours for folks who are interested to come together, and that's how the definition was fleshed out. And so my question is, for additional work and sort of next steps, do the folks on this call want to also set up or feel like office hours could be helpful to move this conversation forward? That's one question and one potential step that could be supported. My next question is, it sounds like part of what you all feel like is necessary is to engage, for you all advisory council members, to engage some of the folks who haven't been involved, just to see if there's a way that we can bring them back to these meetings, but also what are ways that we can support folks in getting involved with this particular area of work. So it sounds like there needs to be a definitive next step around that. So just wanting to pause to see if there are thoughts about that piece. Mariana mentioned reaching out to individual members. Is that something that you all are agreeing you'd like to do? Just so it's clear for advisory council members what your next steps are.
I'm trying to read the chat, so and I'm not sure which of the several questions we need to answer right away, given that it's only 5 minutes left. So I'm happy to, I don't know if we have time to discuss a little bit, reaching out to other members, or if I'm trying to understand, Jennifer is saying that there is a possibility that we have quorum right now because there are 5 members.
I guess I'm wrong. If it has to be 6, like a real majority, but.
Okay, but even if we don't have
one
one person appointed.
I guess even if I wonder where that's all written down, like specifically, if there's any room for interpretation, but.
Yeah, we can take the opportunity to say now that we're also reaching out to someone potentially to see if they'd be interested in filling that seat, the empty seat. But as we said before, none of us can really guarantee if they'd be appointed. So just something to keep in mind as you all do your own sort of outreach. And to your question, Mariana, you all really have answered the questions that we laid out. Right now, I'm trying to just make sure everyone's clear on what the next steps are. So this group here needs to decide if you'd like to have office hours to move this conversation forward. It sounds like another next step that was identified is for folks on this call to do.
I don't think of it. I don't think office hours are necessary because here, I mean, the 3 people that were participating or speaking here at this moment, are the ones who were mostly involved in these, unless other folks want office hours, but I don't feel I need office hours to continue working on this definition. I feel that I'm ready to move it forward, but then we cannot move it forward because we don't have quorum. So I'm not, so maybe we should just talk in the 3 minutes that we have left. How are we gonna get quorum? How are we gonna get people to participate in these meetings? Because it feels to me that we're stuck a little bit. So, if the other members of the council right now present have some ideas, if not, maybe we can just discuss via email, but I don't know if that's allowed. So I don't know. Anybody has an idea? I'm happy to reach out to who are the members who are missing and have not been present. Would you put names in the chat, Juliet, if that's allowed, and maybe we can discuss who wants to reach out to someone, and we.
You guys are not in now.
Well, I don't want to put on like public record, making people feel called out for not having attended meetings. And so maybe this is a conversation that we can have offline, but I can send you the full list of the advisory council members, if that's helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I just don't want to put on public record, like making people feel uncomfortable. So
No, of course. I did not mean it that way. I was just trying to have a conversation between those who wants to do outreach. Who do we just select one or two names to do outreach each person? That's what I was just trying to.
So I can,
Just an
Mariana,
idea.
I think this is very helpful. So I can share that currently there are about 5 members who are not like robustly engaged. So we have on the call, we have Jennifer, Mariana, Brittany, Jeffrey, and Rich. So what I'm thinking is if you each take one person, then that does it. And I can send the list, or Juliet said that she would do it. Juliet can send the list to you all. Actually, to avoid quorum, why don't we just send you the name of your AC member whom you're gonna engage with? Does that work for you?
I was hoping that we could decide, because maybe we have had some relationship with some of these people, some connection or some warm, but I don't remember exactly. And especially if we don't want to name names, I don't know. It seems like we're also in another loop here, because we cannot talk about it, but we cannot email about it. Otherwise, we get assigned. I don't know. And we have only 1 minute left. Oh, it's known. Now we're all pumpkins, like Cinderella. I don't know, guys.
I just
Maybe
dropped, I just put the list in the chat of the representatives and each of their roles. Sorry, it took a minute. I had to type it out. It's not that we can't email about it. We just can't email a quorum of members about it, because it is a violation of open meeting law to reach quorum over email.
But
which is,
I'm sorry, but what do you mean? Because don't we send group emails all the time? Like, what does that mean?
yes, but we don't ask. We send the group emails, and you guys as council members do not reply all. The last time that did happen, we had to.
Yes.
We can't reply to an email to all the council members, because that has not been made clear. If that's true, we can't even email each other.
No, we can email you. What would be against the transparency principle that open meeting law is trying to protect is engaging in conversations about the business of the council outside public meetings. So emails can be sent out, but if there's an exchange of emails back and forth between councilors, then that would count as a meeting if there's quorum. and it would have to be properly noticed and taken the conversation to the public forum. So just want to be really clear
When
that
you say
yes.
when you say if there's quorum, are you saying if more than 6 people reply to the email? Because like if I were to send out an informational something to the full council, I mean, there, it's all public because it's in our emails, but what do you, I was under the impression that quorum really only applies if there's some kind of decision happening.
No, I can send out, and I think this actually will be very helpful, a short video that was put together by AOA that really explains in a lot of detail what qualifies as quorum and what does not, and sort of like what conversations should be had in the public forum versus in private, so that we can all refresh our understanding. But yes, if there's an exchange, Jennifer, over emails regarding the business of the council, that conversation should happen in the public forum. But again, I'm gonna put this in the chat and include it in our follow-up email so that we are all level setting.
I'll just say that for other councils that do not have a public meeting cap, this is not as much of a concern, because if open meeting law is like, if we achieve quorum over email, it's not necessarily as difficult for them to be able to just bring the public business into a public meeting to resolve the issue. But because we have a 12 meeting cap per body per year, that is one of the complicating factors and why open meeting law is such a concern. So I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, I think there is a good question about whether or not the participation question constitutes as business of the council that would result in like a.
Sorry, what?
Jennifer asked a question. Conversation about attending meetings shouldn't be restricted. That's not business of the council, correct? And I think that is a good question that we would need to. I think it's dependent on the conversation that takes place.
Yeah, it depends on how that is interpreted. Administrative conversations can take place, but substantive conversations about business of the council are those that should be had in the public arena. I just put on the chat the video. I find this video very helpful, and I do have to say that I do also find this whole engagement process kind of complicated. Although I understand the reason behind open meeting law and find it to be very compelling, there are certain complexities around how we engage with each other and what kinds of things we talk about in the public forum versus in private. And so that's why you've all been navigating with us very kindly, sort of like the executive sessions and the emailing back and forth. So I do appreciate that understanding. But we can provide more clarity. If after you watch this video, you still have questions, please let us know.
Okay, sounds
Thanks,
good.
Carla. And Jennifer is leaving, and it is 12:06. I think we need to wrap it up. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. I mean, I don't know if we can wrap up an action item based on all this discussion, but I guess, yeah, little by little, we're moving forward.
Yeah, I think the best thing would be to end the call, and then we will reach out via email. Yeah, because we're over. Thank you all.
Thank you
so much for attending, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.